Hi there. I spent a few beautiful days on the water sailing, and I had a book with me about the history of Germany between its inception and the Second World War. And from reading that, I learned that there's a big difference between, let's say, the U.S. fascist state, as it's been touted by many people, as it's emerging, let's say, and German fascism. It's not alike at all, and the reason why is that it starts with the fact that when Germany was created by Bismarck was aware of the fact that there was a risk in having a powerful country. So if you put together a number of these little nations and domains in the middle of Europe, and everybody was agreeing to do that, so they came together and they chose Prussia as a leader, and they started to become a country together. If you do that, then you have a risk of this country trying to become an expansionist. So having people developing the mentality in that country that they should expand it, and there was many reasons to expect that to happen. One of them being that basically all other big countries had colonies overseas, but Germany had virtually none. So England had India, Holland had Indonesia, South America was colonized by Spain and all that stuff, and everybody had something, but the Germans in the middle of Europe didn't have anything, and that didn't sit too well. So they were interested in that. Another thing was that they had been very prudent, they had been very wise and humble about what they were doing, but now the industrialists, the people that had the big factories, they started to recognize that you shouldn't try to keep the wages as low as possible. You should increase them, because with the money that you give the people, they will buy something from you. That could work in the current situation as well. If you simply say the government doesn't fund anybody anymore, but companies simply have to pay higher wages to whoever works, and blah blah blah. And then the government funds through wages, not directly. But anyway, and then of course there was electrification. There were real changes in society, real innovations that gave the whole economy a push. That people felt like they were, let's say, young and creative again. And I guess that role is now taken up by the iPhone. Every time there's a new iPhone, everybody feels renewed. And there's some new super advanced feature that they have in their iPhone, and they identify with that. And that does stimulate the economy, apparently. There's people that say that. But electrification and motorized transportation, so cars, they all came about in the period. So that was the generation between 1870 and 1945 or 1939, of course. So people had in their lifetime, they saw this huge increase in wealth and in capability, and they felt like they were makers of that. They were creators of that, and they felt powerful. And that was, of course, that's basically the basis for German superiority. It is like, say, if you were born very muscular, then if you would run around town telling everybody, I'm strong, I can break everything, then everybody would think you're an asshole. But it is true. If you are powerful and you can break everything and lift a steam train and stuff like that, then that's amazing. It is true. It's just annoying to feel superior, to feel better than other people. But the risk is there to start doing that, and that happened in Germany. And they had the First World War, and they had the wars were always looming, according to Bismarck, and he really. With the fact that he knew that he was creating a powerful country, he was trying to avoid any war in Europe, and he made all kinds of coalitions and all different difficult organizations in order to avoid wars in the middle of Europe involving Germany. But it was very hard to do, and in the end he failed. In the First World War it happened, and of course the Second World War. But the important thing about this is that when Hitler came about, after the defeat in the First World War, and of course very humbling, and all these payments, and you had the hyperinflation, and this all was with the same generation of Germans that had felt so superior. he didn't have to do very much to make a fascist national socialist country. He had a whole population that basically felt like they deserved to conquer. He only had to rekindle those illusions and fire them up and tell them, it's the Jews. Choose a scapegoat. No, that's basically, if you have a scapegoat, then you are kind of concentrating all the negative, the demotivating factors into one thing, and then you can get rid of it if you can get rid of the scapegoat. And of course Hitler did in a horrible fashion. And not only that, but anyway, he was a psycho. But there's such a big so if you hear this, you immediately recognize that there's a huge difference between German fascism in the Second World War and corporate fascism in America. The only way that the corporate fascism in America works in the same way if you view the military-industrial complex as a nation in itself. The Pentagon is a different country, and you could do that. They have their own, basically have their own economy. And then the Pentagon in itself, as an organization with workers of every type, lots of industrial prowess and ingenuity and all that stuff, will feel superior in itself, and will develop this fascist, this superiority complex, and will start waging war around the world. But it is not the US as a whole. Actually, so the way that one could think about it is that the US is layered in two layers. You have the military-industrial complex that is like Germany in the Second World War, or in the period, and then the rest of the America is basically Zimbabwe, because in the rest of America, the fertile industries, the farms of Zimbabwe, have been managed so badly by corrupt officials and government that they have been destroyed and they have been outsourced, and it's completely gutted the rest of America. And so, the only thing that has to happen to defeat corporate fascist America is for the president to take control of the military and dismantle the military-industrial complex power base. And then you're left with a more benign country that is, I guess in the process you also would defeat lots of other corruption. So then you would have a Zimbabwe after Mugabe dies. Let's say Mugabe dies tomorrow, and there's a real new leader that has, I guess what you will see is that the people from England will come into Zimbabwe because food supplies are becoming more scarce, with crops failing in Germany now, or not in Germany but in Russia. Millions of acres of wheat and are all not growing because it's too hot, because of climate change. So countries like England will come back to Zimbabwe, make deals, and start farming in earnest there, because it's a very fertile land, and maybe they're already doing that. And then it will come back. The same might happen to the US. You might have simply immigrants or people from outside that say, well, listen, it's still a huge country with huge potential, and we just have to do it right. And let's start with making food, because that's going to be very scarce. Anyway, but I thought it was interesting I think that people that talk about the US as a whole as a fascist country are missing some of the qualities of true fascism as it has occurred before in the Second World War. And there's no comparison, I think, between the US as it is now and Hitler's Germany. I don't think so.